Mộc Văn và chương trình In-Depth ID của đài truyền hình SBTN Úc Châu xin kính chào quý vị. Thưa quý vị, ID In-Depth là chương trình phỏng vấn chuyên sâu, bàn luận về thời cuộc và nói chuyện với chính trị gia của đài truyền hình SBTN Úc Châu. Khách mời của chương trình hôm nay chúng tôi có ông Chris Hayes, Federal Member of Fowler, là đại diện cho khu vực Fowler của liên bang. Very warm welcome to SBTN Úc Châu today, Chris Hayes.
Thank you, Van.
Thưa quý vị, chúng tôi có cơ hội tiếp đón ông Chris Hayes là dân biểu liên bang khu vực Fowler ngày hôm nay tại trường quay, và chúng tôi muốn trao đổi với ông một số chủ đề về chính trị Úc Châu và những cuộc sống, những cái khía cạnh cuộc sống mà chúng ta sẽ nghe sau đây. Chris Hayes, thanks very much. And my first question to you is, can you reflect on your working week at the Australian Parliament, please?
Well, thank you, Van. This week was a little out of the ordinary. This week, I started out this week in speaking in Parliament about the issues of in the Middle East, and as you know, I've been to the Middle East. I've visited many of the refugee camps there, and was personally calling on the Prime Minister to act on behalf of the Australian government in a compassionate way, much the same way as the Australian government acted during the fall of Saigon, and where we took people into this country who have done a wonderful job building up our communities and adding to our very much multicultural community. And later this week, the government did exactly that. We are now committed to taking 12,000 additional people from the Middle East, principally out of Syria, mainly women, children and family units, and having them resettled in Australia. So I think what we saw this week is not just an action of caring. This week we saw the actions of a compassionate nature, and as I say, the same sort of compassion that was shown post 1975 with the fall of Saigon.
Thank you. Is 12,000 places for Syrian refugees enough, or how do you think about that quota?
Well, given the fact that Syria has 23 million people, almost the same population of Australia, half the population now is displaced, so that's 12 million people. Many of them are in refugee camps in Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon. So people could say that 12,000 is not even a drop in the ocean, but as part of a worldwide effort, not just Australia but other countries taking major steps, including European nations, I think what occurred this week in the Australian Parliament was very, very significant.
Very good. And I'm aware that in 2014, you and a number of member of parliaments went to Syria. And would you please brief us about that trip? And
well, as it turned out, it was only myself and one other,
yes.
The then Chief Government Whip, Philip Ruddock, and myself. We visited the refugee camps in Jordan and Turkey and Lebanon. We saw the abject desperation. We saw that people with no hope, the people we spoke to, mainly women and children, they only ever wanted one thing. They wanted to be able to go home. But because Syria is now in the grips of a massive civil war, that's just not going to be possible. And we visited many classrooms. Classrooms were tents. Kids sat on the floor, but they were the lucky ones. The vast majority of children are no longer in formal education, and regrettably, if you don't have an education, you know, we are looking at a lost generation. So I indicated when I came back and I spoke to the Australian Parliament, I did say that you could not visit those refugee camps and talk to people there and come away unaffected. And as a consequence, Philip Ruddock and myself wrote a joint report calling on the Australian government to do more in terms of the issues resulting out of the civil war in Syria.
Yes. Do you think the Australian government is prepared with the tragedy in Syria, in Iraq, and getting abreast with the situation, or they are a little bit slower behind?
Well, the Middle East is very, very complicated. It's not a various factional groups. Syria itself, it's not just ISIS or Daesh. It is the regime of President al-Assad, and there's also the Free Syrian Army. So there's multiple players in here, people not prepared to cooperate and sit around a table and find a resolution. And then you have ISIS, who are probably the most devastating opponents of all, because they don't value human life. They're prepared to cut the throats of men, women and children, and anybody who does not agree to their ideology. So this is not a traditional war. This is something which is very hard to come to terms with, particularly nations such as Australia that believe in fairness and decency, and what we see over there is anything but fairness and decency.
Now, comparisons are being made at this crucial moment of time between the fall of Saigon in 1975 and the Syrian refugee crisis. What is your thought about that?
Well, I think it's right. In 1975, with the fall of Saigon, people left the communist regime. They escaped, and they didn't necessarily plan to come to Australia or America or anywhere else. They wanted safety and security for their families. And fortunately, Australia saw, and we were allies with South Vietnam. And it was only right that under Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser, we took in initially 50,000 refugees from Vietnam. What we are seeing now in Syria is that we are allies with the government in Iraq. We see the fighting that's taking place in Syria has at its genesis what occurred in Iraq. So again, we are allied there. These people are in the predicament they are in now because of instability in the whole Middle East. And again, we've got a role to play. And if you look at what occurred in this nation since the fall of Saigon, my electorate alone, here in southwest Sydney, 22% of my electorate is made up of Vietnamese speakers. They are represented in every area of the professions, the trades, business, finance. The Vietnamese community since 1975 have made such a great contribution to the Australian way of life. We should all be very, very proud of that. And I think that's one of the greatest things about our nation. Our nation is forged on the benefits that new arrivals bring and how they've changed the concept of Australia into the future. So based on that analogy with Vietnam, I would like to think that the people that we can help resettle will go on to, and their children will go on to make a great contribution to this nation. But having said that, bear in mind the people I spoke to in refugee camps, they really want to go home when it's safe to do so. They're not asking for permanent resettlement, they would like to go home. And going home for them is just not possible at the moment.
Talking about the community, and in this case Vietnamese community, do you know anything about the restoration of funding Part B to the services of the community being announced recently? Yes,
it was only a couple of weeks ago. Earlier this year, the government decided to cut funding to the Vietnamese community on the basis they've been here for 40 years, therefore they should be considered a mature community and therefore it doesn't require ongoing funding. But there's some specific issues in the Vietnamese community that the VCA and other groups have been working on and doing a lot of good work, particularly in respect to money management, helping people manage their finances. The VCA is running anti-gambling programs and also working very well in domestic violence. I wrote to the government in, I think it was early February this year, seeking them to review their decisions, have a look at this community, have a look at the great benefits that our agencies have been able to do to assist the Vietnamese community here in southwest Sydney. And happily, a couple of weeks ago, the government changed its mind and the money has been restored.
So which part A or part B, or because there's two parts to the funding, and one is for the
what part restored was 140,000, which is going to the money management, which part of that will go to also providing assistance through the administration and being support for counsellors of domestic violence.
Good. Chris Hayes, now may I ask you about the Canning by-election?
Yes, yeah.
So what's the chance for Labour Party in this by-election, and is it significant?
Well, any by-election is significant because it's a chance for people to obviously elect a member there, but also a chance to make a decision mid-term on how a government's going. I actually spoke to Matt Keogh yesterday, who's the Labor candidate in Canning, and he tells me that his campaigning on the ground's going very strongly. By the way, he's campaigning on a few key items. He's about issues about the China Free Trade Agreement. He's campaigning on the broken promises of the Abbott government, particularly in relation to health and education. And he tells me these are issues which very much resonate with people over there, and he believes that there will be a significant vote against the government as a consequence of broken promises alone. Anyway, it's a little while, next week or so, we'll have the election. We'll see whether he was right in his assessment. But I've got to say he's very, very confident. It's a very safe Liberal seat, by the way. It's almost 12%, so that's a very safe seat. I imagine anyone in government at the moment will be a little keen to see, is this a negative for them? Because a bad vote for them will be seen as a vote against the federal government.
Correct. Now, let's move to the 2-year anniversary of the Tony Abbott government. People are talking about major reshuffles.
Yes.
is offing, in the offing.
Yes.
And now, I may use the Lee Sales terminology in 7:30 report the other day. So Tony Abbott is a very effective opposition leader, but not so effective prime minister. How do you think?
Well, being in the government when he was leading the opposition, I can't recall too many occasions where he agreed to cooperate on anything. As a matter of fact, he was referred to as Dr. No because he said no to everything. And maybe that's what you can do in opposition, but we take the view that we're working for the benefit of all Australians. I don't think anyone can seriously look at the performance of this government and think that they are doing well. Every opinion poll, that's about the last 70 opinion polls conducted, has them significantly behind Labor. And we're not trying to make anything out of that, except people do not accept that this government is delivering on what they said they were going to do when they were elected in 2013. For instance, they said there'll be no cuts to health, no cuts to education, no cuts to pensions, no GST adjustment, and all these things, and many, many more, they have gone on and made efforts to cut and change those things. They said in terms of car industry in Australia, not only did they see that they should expand and develop, they wanted the car industry to flourish. They took away every incentive out of the motor vehicle industry and eventually told General Motors Holden, if you don't like it, leave the country. They have done all that under their watch. And even the Liberal government here in New South Wales has complained about the cuts to the hospitals and to the school systems. And when we talk about Gonski, and this is something, by the way, the Vietnamese community in my electorate are very, very passionate about. They see money going to the education of young people is central to the Vietnamese way of life because they want their kids very, very well educated. And the idea of cutting the years 4 and 5 and 6 out of the, 5 and 6 out of the Gonski equation, which is about 80% of the money, and if the federal government's not putting it in, you've got to start looking at state governments, and that's why the New South Wales Liberal government is complaining about this as well. So, look, it doesn't matter how you cut this. A budget they brought down, their first budget, punished pensioners, punished single parents, punished families. The next budget they brought down, they wanted to give a hand to small businesses, which was fine. I don't know if they really want to bring another budget down. They have hurt just too many people too often.
Okay. Yes, thanks very much. Can you share with us, this is final question, about some of your activities in the forward planning calendar?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for your listeners, I've just come back from Canberra. Yeah. Tomorrow I'll be setting off with about 2,000 policemen and their supporters, and we're on the police wall-to-wall ride. We'll ride from Sydney to Goulburn to Canberra, commemorating those police officers that have been killed on duty, and also raising money for legacy. And by the way, at the end of this month is a Police Remembrance Day, and I will be speaking in Parliament next week about that. But in addition to that, we're making preparations with my electorate for the Moon Festival now. We are got a number of functions coming on, including the Vietnamese Australian Welfare Association, with this month is celebrating its 40th anniversary, so that is coming on. Longer term preparations, we're looking at the Moon Festival, and also there's a very important thing for me each year is the Motorcycle Safety Week in October, because I'm one of the few members of Parliament that still rides motorbikes. It's one of those things I've done all my life.
Excellent.
And notwithstanding my grey hair, and I feel very comfortable on motorcycles.
We talk more about the next week. I love that subject, topic. Okay, Chris Hayes, thanks very much. Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi là cuộc phỏng vấn giữa chúng tôi, Mộc Văn của truyền hình SBTN Úc Châu với dân biểu Chris Hayes, đơn vị founder của Liên bang Úc Châu. Đến đây thì cảm ơn quý vị đã theo dõi chương trình và xin hẹn gặp lại chương trình ID tuần sau. Xin cảm ơn. Thanks very much, Chris, and good luck.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.